All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to today's Tackle Talk. Out here today behind the camera, and I'm doing some map study for a tournament that I got coming up on Grand Lake, Oklahoma. Now, I've got the Angler's Choice National Championship on April 14th and 15th, so I'm thinking there's going to be some pretty big bags caught. You're probably going to have to catch a decent amount of weight to be up there and hang with the top guys both days. Now, with that said, I was just kind of looking around and I thought of a video idea, and that's how to break down new bodies of water. Now, with this lake here, it's an Ozark style lake, so I'm kind of going to go into how I break these down. That being to split this lake up into three major sections. Now, the first section just being your dam section, the second being your mid-lake section, and then the last section being your river arms or your major creek arms sections. Now, depending on the time of year or the cycle that those bass should be in, that's really going to dictate which section I'm fishing in. If it's the summertime, I might do something like run up the river and look for some current that's going to position those fish. Or if it's the winter time, I'll run out to the dam section and fish those deeper water haunts that those winter fish are going to use. Just more prime winter fishing locations up there. If it's the pre-spawn, I'll probably fish this midsection or this. So being the pre-spawn, or being the tournament that's coming up for me is going to be a pre-spawn, if not spawn tournament, just depending on the weather. I'd probably start my search somewhere in this mid-lake section. Now, I've never been to Honey Creek. I mean, I've never really been anywhere in this mid-lake section as a whole. But if you do notice, in every single major section, there are major creek arms. So up by the dam, you got Duck Creek, Drowning Creek. In the midsection, you got Horse Creek and Honey Creek. And those are really where I'm going to start my search, in those major creeks. So I've never been to Honey. I've never been to this midsection, like I said. So I'll just come in here and show you guys how I would break this down. So with this being April 14th and 15th, I would imagine that those bass are going to probably be later on into their pre-spawn period, if not already spawning, like I said, just dependent on the weather. I'm not really going to start out here a whole lot by the main lake. Now, if it was closer to that winter period, I might start out here on some of these steeper banks. But with it being closer to the pre-spawn, I'm going to start off by running to the back of Honey Creek, like the way back. Depending on water level, I might come back here and flip all the bushes, but I'm going to start off just by coming to the backs and picking apart those isolated targets and see if those bass are already back there utilizing that last staging area before they really start spawning. If I get bit back there, great. I'm going to start running a lot of the backs of some of these major pockets here and see if I can get bit in that shallow water on those isolated targets. But if I don't, all I'm going to do is start hitting the high percentage areas bouncing out of this creek. Now, if I say I have an east to west wind, I'm really going to just more so focus on that stuff on that west side bank, because that wind is going to position those fish easier to catch and more likely to feed. So I'm really, like I said, I'm going to hit this last little steep bank right here. That's a high percentage area that those fish would use before they spawn. I'd run out here. I might hit this point right here if it's got some good wind on it. Maybe graph a little bit, see if I see some brush around it. I'm definitely going to fish this riprap bridge right here. For those of you who don't know, riprap has a population of bass that live on it all year long. I might fish 50 yards on the outside of this little point here and then 50 yards inside of it. Same with this one here, but I'm not going to spend too much time on these little baby pockets. Just not areas that I can, or not major staging areas that I would imagine would hold larger groups of fish. So you guys kind of get what I'm saying here. Your major type areas. I mean, that would be a really good one right there that I just noticed. That is actually, yeah, that's really your first major flat going into Honey Creek. If you guys look, it's fairly steep all over in this creek. So That's one of your first major flats right there going into the back of a spawning pocket. That's something I would 100% take some time and really graph through this area to see if I could find some shell bars, some brush piles, some rock piles, something out here on this flat that I think would be really, really an awesome pre-spawn area for those fish to stage on before they push back into this pocket and spawn. Now, I will go into the back here and just check this little stuff, you know, your steep banks, just because this is a major spawning pocket that I can tell within the creek. It's got a large enough area to hold and sustain a large number of bass that are going to push back here to spawn. So, like I said, just hit your high percentage stuff, bounce out. I'm really not going to mess with these little pockets all too much. I've never really found this stuff to be really beneficial for me. Now, maybe the pockets, I mean, I guess these wouldn't be terrible because they're very close to the main lake, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in them. You can pull up in these pockets and potentially catch a very, very large fish, because this is something that I would imagine a very big fish would utilize to spawn and then get back out to deep water, or have deep water access very close. But I would not spend too much time looking in those types of areas in the pre-spawn. Now, I'd run into this pocket right here because it's not very big. I'd fish a couple little key areas in here. This last bluff bank, this bluff bank, maybe that point right there. That one right there looks a little bit flatter. That might be a little area these fish stage on. Yeah, it looks like a little flatter bank. But just your major stuff that is very, very obvious. Now, if I go in that creek, all of Honey Creek there, and I hit all those high percentage areas, and I hit all the high percentage areas that I feel would hold staging bass in both of these two creeks and don't get a bite, you're in trouble. So with that said, I'm going to write off that whole midsection of the lake. Now, I know that might sound very hasty and pretty quick to leave an area. But with that said, I fished all the prime locations within this creek that I felt would hold staging bass. I don't really see a need to fish them all. Every single one of these major creek arms is going to have a population of bass in it. So I feel as though if I've covered this effectively and fished all that, all those high percentage areas and not had bites, this is not the section of the lake that I need to be in. Now, what I have found in these Ozark style lakes is there's always a specific section, whether that be your dam, your mid-lake, or your river arm section. There always tends to be one section that is on fire compared to the rest. Now, that might just be my personal opinion, but I have tried and tried to sit in these areas and grind it out and try to figure out how to catch these fish that are in here, when in reality, all I needed to do was abandon this and move to a new section of the lake and try a different water clarity, a different water temperature. Now, I would assume that the water temperature in this creek is going to be very similar to a majority of the temperature of the major creeks around, just because it's the same section of the lake. So, like I said, don't be afraid to abandon this and go run way up the river somewhere and look up here or something like that. But just hit all your high percentage areas within that major section and write it off until you find the most productive water. That's how I do it anyway. I hope you guys like this video. Hopefully you learned a little something from it. If you got any questions, drop them down in the comments, or anything that you feel like I missed, drop it down in the comments. Like the video if you like the content, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.